All right, we're now live on YouTube. So for those who are joining us now on YouTube, this is the Week 1 Vikings About the Labor Rapid Reaction Show. It's a Week 1 W, 24-16 over the San Francisco 49ers. I'm here with Nick Olson and Sean Borman. As the usual here, we're going to get to some topics here shortly once I get us going on the Periscope here. But what do you guys, for right now, let's just give out a kind of a quick reaction. What do you guys first think of when you think back of this game? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Kirk Cousins looked great. That's the first thing that comes to mind. He was the one I was most interested in seeing how he played, and he had some pinpoint darts. Red zone throwing, end zone throwing, the sideline throw to Diggs, the touchdown to Rudolph, third down conversion to Thielen. Wasn't pinpoint perfect on every throw, but it was a heck of a game from him. So happy about that.
What I'm thinking is, that's what I'd use to describe it. It was a good game. We got the win, got it out of the way. I've been a Cousins fan since the start, so I was more concerned with the offensive line. I did not think they looked particularly great, but we do have Elflein coming back, so I think that'll help. As advertised, the defense looks fantastic. Mike Hughes looks even better than everybody thought. So I thought it was just a good win. It would have been scary to see us come out and lose this game. So it's just a good, solid win to get out of the way.
Yeah, I think we can start here going from the offense side of the ball, then we'll go to the defense side of the ball. I know Nick is short on time, so we'll try to make this somewhat quick here. But offensively, how do you guys feel about Kirk Cousins today? I thought he started really well, especially the first half, threw a bunch of dimes, both touchdown throws, as mentioned before the show here from Nick, that the one to Diggs in the end zone, one to Rudolph in the back of the end zone, both perfect. How do you guys think? How would you assess his performance? Kind of grade it maybe on obviously like a 4.0 scale. What do you guys think?
I'd give him like an A-. There's a couple throws he maybe wanted to have back, a couple deep overthrows. But, just the pinpoint sideline throw to Diggs was just a phenomenal. Hard to place it any better than that throw. The touchdown throw to Rudolph. And the other thing with Cousins is a lot of people, myself included, have been concerned about how Cousins will play under pressure, and he was phenomenal under pressure. Was getting rid of the ball on time, knew when to run, knew when to hold on to the ball. So I thought he did a really good job all around.
Yeah, that's a great point, is that he did play well under pressure today, and that was a big knock and concern I had with him as well. As far as a grade, I'd give him a B+. His completion percentage wasn't all it could have been. And I've kind of said from the start that Cousins is like Bradford. And Drew, you added he's like Bradford, but he's got a little more mobility. But his arm is phenomenal when he's on. I mean, we saw him short off today, but he can put it up there. His accuracy is up there with the best of them. So that was fun to watch. So I give him a B+ for the day. He struggled. I think he ended the day with like 7 straight incompletions, but that wasn't really his fault. That could be more or less the offense, either the play calling or the offensive line. But solid day overall. No huge complaints.
Yeah, there were a few drops in there, so his completion percentage maybe a little better. But Treadwell had that killer third down drop. Thielen weirdly, I think, had a couple drops. So
Yeah, I mean, I thought he missed his throws later in the game. The offense kind of stalled or slowed down a little bit as they were ahead. And I think maybe this is kind of like Nick mentioned before the show, sort of a staple almost for the Mike Zimmer era here, where if the Vikings get ahead, they kind of coast, if you will. But I think it's really encouraging that I was a little bit worried about the chemistry Cousins had with some of these receivers, especially with Thielen kind of in preseason. Didn't seem like he was there with Rudolph too. They connected obviously in this game. The running game I thought would have some success right away. It looked like the offensive line was pretty solid in the preseason and training camp. Creating running lanes for Dalvin Cook, Latavius Murray. Not so much today. I don't know if you guys are concerned about that at all, but 24 points. The Vikings get that 20-point benchmark and they usually win. So you guys concerned about lack of efficiency with the running game at all?
The run blocking seemed very poor, and it's kind of hard to judge from the broadcast angle how the run blocking looks. But they were Dalvin Cook particularly was hit in the backfield a lot. You don't like to see that. So thought Cook and Murray were making the most of what they got, but the run blocking was poor. And to be fair to the 49ers, they have a very good defensive front four. So yeah, but it was a little disappointing.
Yeah, and I'm not too concerned about it. Like I said, with Elfline coming back, I think he's a strong run blocker. You move Jones over to left guard, where Compton, he just flat out sucked today. Did you see the game Buckner had? I mean, he had 2.5 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. It's like 6 tackles. He's all over the place. So I'm anxious to see Compton out of there. Oh yeah,
he's their best great. But so.
I do not think Compton would last a full season. So I'll be happy to see Elfline back in there. If they struggle once he's back, I might be a little more concerned, but I'm not at all concerned right now.
To be fair to Compton, he did have that crucial third down, drew the offsides.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, gosh, it was one of those that last
brief actually.
I can't believe that worked. Like, I mean, everybody watching the game, everybody in the stadium knew they're not going to snap the ball, right? I mean, I think it was Solomon Thomas. I think he was is he a first round draft choice last year or the year before? But I mean, yeah, that's a young player mistake that you wouldn't expect to happen. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it worked. The Vikings got the win. It turns out okay. But I guess we can move on to the defensive side here. But while we still have Nick, I thought it was a fantastic performance. I mean, you get one of the best young offensive minds in the game. You get a quarterback who's on the up and up and soon to be elite, in my opinion. Say what you want about kind of the receiving. I thought, Marquise Goodwin, Pierre Garcon, that's not a bad duo. No Jerick McKinnon, obviously, but that offensive line is pretty solid up there too, and they did have some unfortunate injuries. But overall, Vikings a couple times bent, but they did the bend but not break kind of style of play there with that long drive that resulted in a fumble. What do you guys think about the defense? Anything stand out to you guys?
We had some really big performances from the stars, I think. Harrison Smith had the game-clinching interception. He had a crucial third down sack. He had a huge tackle for loss. He had the goal line fumble recovery. So he was everywhere. He's, making his case to be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. That's the kind of game that was. Rhodes had a big interception. Mike Hughes, pick six, and end zone pass breakup, had a phenomenal game as well. So good stuff. And then the defensive line, Joe Staley was last year was Pro Football Focus's #1 left tackle, and Griffin and Hunter were just thrashing him, banging him like a drum. So Sheldon Richardson, he was getting more favorable matchups than maybe the best left tackle in the game, but Sheldon Richardson was in the backfield. It seemed like every play. I think he got to the quarterback 4 times. So 1 sack and 3 QB hits. So really phenomenal.
How unfair is that, by the way? How unfair is it that the Vikings had 3 Pro Bowl caliber players on the line last year, and then they add Sheldon Richardson at 3 tech?
It's insane.
It's not fair.
It's not out of the question that all 4 of our starting defensive linemen will make the Pro Bowl this year, which is insane. But I could see it happening. So we did see, I think some people will be concerned about how well the 49ers moved the ball. And I think that's just Kyle Shanahan is he's maybe the best offensive mind in football right now, which is saying something with, Belichick and Sean Payton and everyone else. But he's just so good. And especially with fullbacks, tight ends, he'll scheme guys open downfield and he'll hit you with explosive plays. So that's just tough. That's just scheme stuff. So hard to defend that stuff. Ben Gideon's not a good pass matchup. So I wouldn't worry about that in the long term.
It seemed to me like Shanahan was able to scheme kind of the George Kittle versus Ben Gideon matchup a few times, and it resulted in some big gains. Because Kittle was open more often than not when he was targeted, and a couple times where Garoppolo missed throws that would have been big gains and possibly switched this game in a different direction. But Sean, from you, Mike Hughes, the big play, the secondary kept Garoppolo in check for the most part. How do you feel about this defense now? Next week, we're moving on to next week. This win's over, whatever. Now, I'm kidding. But with Aaron Rodgers up next week, how do you feel about the Vikings going up against the best quarterback in the NFL after what you've seen today?
bring him on, man. I'm not scared of Aaron Rodgers really as much as I used to be, because this Vikings defense is phenomenal. Like Nick was saying, this 49ers offense is actually pretty sneakily good. Mm-hmm. So I think what we were able to do to Garoppolo today with 3 picks, it was solid. You know, it wasn't really unexpected. But as far as going forward to the Packers, I mean, them getting rid of Jordy, I'm really excited to see how our defense does. I don't think they're going to be able to stand up like you guys were talking about against the front 4 as well. So I see a lot of potential for the Vikings, and more so than I do see having the Packers having a good day against our defense. I just don't see it.
I mean, it really seems like that 20-point benchmark. You know, I think going into the season, the Vikings were like 32-4 or something under Zimmer when they score 20 points or over 20 points or something like that. And I mean, you look at the schedule and you see all these games, and it seems very realistic in a lot of games. No matter the offense they play against, there's obviously Green Bay, but then you look at, I think they have New England this year. They have Philly. They have the Rams. It seems like it's still realistic, especially for the home games, that the Vikings can hold these teams under 20. And from what you saw from the offense today, even without much of a running game, the Vikings were able to put up 24. Cousins had his way for the most part, moving the ball down the field. It seems like that's kind of going to be the formula for the Vikings. Put up 24, maybe 28, but something in the 20s for points, and then the defense can just keep teams in the teens somewhere, and that should be the winning formula for Zimmer. Right, guys?
I think that's right.
Yeah, I was going to add to what I was stating before. I mean, not only with Mike Hughes, but with the 2 safeties. I mean, Sendejo had a phenomenal day. But we have 5 safeties. Jaron Curse had a phenomenal day. I mean, did we even see Aloka? I don't even know.
I think Jaron was the 3rd safety today, because they did a lot of 3 safety stuff, and Jaron was the 3rd guy, which really surprised me.
I mean, how are you going to pass against that many great defensive backs?
It's wild to think about this. It's wild to think about who's the worst starter on the Vikings nickel defense. Like maybe Mike Hughes, who had a pick 6 and a red zone pass breakup, or maybe Trey Waynes, who took a huge step forward last year and looked pretty good this game. It's wild to think about. So, and even Ben Gadian, who's was a 3rd linebacker. He was top 5 in run stop percentage last year.
Yeah,
so
I know.
We have an extremely
right, and you think I think really the only way that you have to be an offensive genius, offensive guru, have some sort of unique thing about your offense that Mike Zimmer has not game planned for. That's kind of the one way that I would see a team lighting up the Vikings, right? Even Kyle Shanahan today, I thought the wrinkles with George Kittle, got the Niners moving at times, and I think that touchdown throw from Garoppolo, I mean, I don't know how you defend that, but outside of that, Vikings kept the Niners under wraps. I mean, you're looking back to last year. Sean Payton came back in the second half. He's kind of, he's a well-known offensive mind in the NFL. And then we know what the Eagles did. And Doug Peterson clearly is a formidable coach and knows what he's doing. So it just seems like Mike Zimmer has most of these coaches beat in the NFL. And today he had Kyle Shanahan beat. Who knows how good Shanahan will be in 15 years. He's going to be coaching for a while. But point being, this defense with these playmakers and the way Zimmer coaches it, I mean, it's going to be very, very difficult for a team to score on them. And I think it's going to take the Vikings offense kind of having a poopy day, if you will, for a team to have a chance to win, right?
I think that's right. I'm sorry, I got to bounce, but
all right, sounds good. Guys. Hey, Nick Olson, thank you for joining for the time you did have.
Yeah, take care at school.
And it's funny he's leaving. I was just going to say he had a great article recently when he looked back at the 38-7 loss.
Oh yeah, which
the Eagles.
We don't need to do that. We don't need to think about that too much. But I mean,
no. But just to bring up the point that Zimmer may have been a little outcoached in that game, which is kind of what Nick's article was about, and what you were referring to earlier with Shanahan. By adding John DeFilippo, I think the Vikings have the best of both worlds. I mean, you got, like I said, for a while, you got an innovative offensive mind with DiFilippo that Zimmer can kind of piggyback off of and look at the innovative trends that NFL offenses are coming out with. So we've got the best of both worlds. We're able to defend innovative offenses as well as have one ourselves. So it's pretty cool.
Right. All right. Now, I think we're getting some comments here on the YouTube about the offensive line. You're a little bit concerned about it. Is this something that you think moving forward against maybe a little bit more of a formidable opponent, Packers next week, or maybe looking forward to the Rams or Eagles in a few weeks, do you think that's something that could plague the Vikings enough to where it cost the Vikings a game? I mean, Kirk Cousins was under pressure. It seemed like nearly every time that he was taking a 5-7 step drop, something like that. It seemed like DiFilippo was able to kind of go around it a few times with quicker drops and a lot of slant concepts, some things in the flat, little play action rollout type of thing. But it seems like when Cousins had to take more time to look for something more down the field, more often than not, he was under pressure. And again, there's some talented guys on this 49ers front, but is this something you're worried about moving forward? And will it be something that, I don't want to think too hard back in 2016, but that's kind of what plagued the Vikings then. Is this something that you think not maybe reach that level, but something that could keep the team from being a Super Bowl contender?
Honestly, like I said earlier, I'm not that concerned right now. But yeah, absolutely, it absolutely could turn into something that could halt the Vikings' chances of a Super Bowl run, exactly like it did in 2016. I thought it was the move to go out and get Brett Jones was phenomenal. He's basically
right.
Nick Easton. I mean, he can be a backup center or a left guard. But if Elflein returns or if he has to sit out longer than expected, they could be in some deep trouble. I mean, the Packers went out and who did they pick up this offseason, that defensive lineman?
Muhammad Wilkerson.
Wilkerson,
right?
I mean, yep. So, and not to mention the Bears going out getting Khalil Mack. So, I mean,
not too bad of a pickup, right?
There's a couple guys right there that could really wreak havoc on the Vikings offense, in the future if they don't shore things up, which I guess may or may not be a legit concern at this point. I don't think it is personally. What about you? What do you think, Drew?
Today Cousins kind of eased some of my concerns about his play under pressure. That was kind of something I was concerned about when the Vikings added him and paid him all that money. Was here's a guy that when you looked at his games from Washington, lots of times he was turnover prone or mistake prone when under pressure. So I kind of worried about that aspect, with the Vikings offensive line that's kind of hit or miss in pass protection. But today I thought he did really well. I think there was one throw in particular. It was a third and I think medium, probably 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, something like that. And he threw it over the middle to Thielen for a first down. And there was, I think it might have been Buckner, had his hand right in the face of Kirk Cousins, kind of up like this, trying to knock the ball out of his hand. And Cousins stood in there and rifled it in at, it seemed like 120 miles an hour. Just a freaking bullet in there. So that right there, I mean, that obviously is just one play and one example. But I think overall for the day, Cousins really surpassed my expectations that I would have had if I had known he'd be under this type of pressure. So, I think that will get easier for the offensive line and, Cousins throughout the season as this running game gets a little better. I was surprised again at how inefficient it was today. I thought, it looked like in training camp and in preseason, they were kind of running all over, whether it be preseason opponents or the Vikings defense. It seemed like they had their way a lot of the time, and today they didn't. So that's something I'm almost more concerned about, the running game being this inefficient all season than the pass protection. Because I think once the running game, or if the running game ever gets to 4.5 yards per carry type of average instead of I think 3.5, whatever it was today, that'll open up a lot of things and make the pass protection a lot easier.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because if you look at the construction of the offensive line right now, it's kind of comprised of a lot of good pass blockers per se, not so much run blockers. So that's it could be a
I
concern
think that's one
going
reason.
forward.
What's one reason Brett Jones, I think, may have been brought in is that I think he's kind of known for being a run mauler, and I think that can maybe balance some things out there. But when Elflein gets back, that's always going to help quite a bit. So I mean, and again, this might be being a little picky, maybe not, because the Vikings did get 7 points from Mike Hughes today. But if the Vikings can just put up something in the 20s, they're going to have a good chance to win every single week, and they did that today. Moving forward, that should kind of be the expectation for this offense: is just put something up right there and trust this defense to hold teams into that 13-16 range. That seems to be this winning formula. So, but we'll kind of move on here. Let's talk about, I liked to see the Diggs-Sherman matchup a little bit, and I guess it wasn't really just Diggs over there, but I thought Diggs, Sherman for the most part was just, I don't think he really that much of a positive impact in this game. Like, is he past his? I mean, he's past his prime, but I thought, he was there. I think how much did he sign for? Like $13 million or something like that for the Niners. And I thought the Vikings were able to, he's not the shutdown impact player that he used to be, right?
No, Diggs just made him look silly on a couple plays.
That comeback route was, I tweeted, get Richard Sherman a map because he's lost trying to cover Stephon Diggs on that, right?
Yeah, and that part of that credit should go to Diggs too, because he's just such a phenomenal route runner. But it was fun to watch that, and even Thielen too. I'm not sure how much he was lined up with Sherman, but Thielen had a big day too. So between both guys, I really want to see Treadwell. I mean, what was with that first drop? I hated seeing that. I feel like if he is able to pick up his game, that's 3 receivers right there that are impossible to cover, one-on-one, all 3 of them. So.
Right, yeah, and I think that's also part of when you see Thielen in the slot so much. You get these corners that are 5'9", 5'10", against Thielen, and at the line of scrimmage, if they try and bump him, Thielen's just too big and strong, and obviously he's really good, with his feet too. So a lot of those slant routes today you saw from Cousins to Thielen over the middle for, the 10, 15-yard gains. That's going to be there all season, I think. Thielen's that good off the line, and those mismatches are going to be there.
That's something that I've always been envious of I hate to say it, but I've always been envious of the Packers about, was the quick slant game. And like you said, it was on today with Cousins and Thielen. I love seeing that. That's very tough to defend. So I hope to see a lot more of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's, now, okay, so you have Thielen in the slot. You have Diggs outside, who we saw him torch Sherman for today. He was quiet for the most part during the day. It looked like the Vikings were kind of moving over the middle more so, and Diggs kind of maintained his role outside. It took a while for Kyle Rudolph to get going today. I think he only had 1 catch, actually. It ended up being a touchdown. But he did have just the 1 catch. Tyler Conklin had a catch before Kyle Rudolph this season. I did not predict that in my bold predictions this season. But part of me is thinking, okay, the whole tight end thing with John DeFilippo and Cousins, like I thought there'd be a lot of connection there with Rudolph. Didn't see it in preseason. Didn't see it much in training camp even. Is that a worry for you, really, with Rudolph only getting the 1 catch today, or is it just something that, it just happened throughout the course of the game where Rudolph's just targeted the one time?
To me, it's not a concern. In fact, I saw a lot in training camp that I didn't see at all today, as far as moving the pocket laterally across the field, like a lot. We didn't see it a whole lot today. So I think there's going to be a lot more wrinkles to this offense that are unveiled as the season goes along, which gets me pretty excited.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, like I've always said necessarily, I kind of, when you dive more into Kirk Cousins after he signed, I thought he's a little bit of Sam Bradford with the arm talent, like we talked before, he's a little bit of a more mobile Sam Bradford, or if you want to say it this way, it's just kind of how I said it before, is that he's sort of a mixture of Case Keenum and Sam Bradford. So you get some of the mobility of Case Keenum, which, by the way, Cousins today, I was surprised at how much he was willing to take off and run. I think that last, the 3rd and 6, where he tried to, he lowered his head, which is scary for, when you're playing a guy $84 million trying to lower his head against 2 linebackers and try and get that first down. But that does help when the running game is not pulling its weight. When you have a quarterback that can pick up those first downs, those third medium, third long first downs on scrambles. He did that a couple of times today. So it goes a little bit under the radar most of the time. But I think it's important to note that if teams do have to pull a spy for someone like Cousins and take someone out of the coverage, that opens things up tremendously behind. So that's another wrinkle I think that we might just see throughout the season. Because I don't know how you pay attention to Dalvin Cook and Kyle Rudolph and Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs and then still pull a guy to watch Kirk Cousins out of the pocket running. So I think that'll be there all season. It's just it's something that I didn't expect from Cousins because I knew he was more mobile than Sam Bradford, but I didn't think he'd be that willing to take off.
Yeah, see, another thing that I loved when that I really got excited about when I found out this offseason he was going to be available. And that's not a knock, to Keenum, who is phenomenal improvisation artist, Bradford, great passer, and Teddy, we all love him, but his injury was just too much to deal with. But with Keenum, I tweeted earlier, the Vikings are getting exactly what they thought out of him. And he's able to hit his wide receivers downfield. He's going to really inflate the receiving numbers of the running backs. Because I saw that today with Cook. Mm-hmm. And also, like we just talked about, he'll spread the ball around, obviously, as well. But he'll show off that unexpected mobility, I think, in clutch times. So he, like you said, he went for that first down, which I don't think anybody wanted to see when he lowered his head there. But he went for it. He's pretty gutsy and ballsy quarterback so far. So I think he's the perfect guy to lead the Vikings offense with the personnel we have right now.
Yeah, I would say Aaron Rodgers is the perfect quarterback to do it, but the perfect quarterback that was available at the time for the Vikings and a realistic addition to the team. I'll give you that.
I don't know. The guy breaks his collarbone. The guy breaks his collarbone a lot.
That's true. He's got a fragile collarbone. And the Vikings offensive line, that might be a little risky, but we'll kind of start to wrap things up here. I was going to say we can.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish up.
Well, you were talking about earlier with his mobility, and the more the Vikings offense has success, I think Cousins will alleviate some pressure off of the offensive line too. So I think that will really help.
Sure. Yeah.
Get things going.
And I think as things move along too, you'll see like John DeFilippo start to, scheme up some things that are only even easier for Cousins and the offensive line. Those quicker throws. Didn't see much in the screen game today. I think a couple times, but I would have expected more given what we saw in the preseason in the screen game. So I think that'll come a little bit easier. You'll see more of that. And moving forward, I think I really don't expect the offensive line to drop off or anything. But if there's a game, for example, that the Vikings have to go 60 yards in 3 minutes, which, by the way, we should probably touch on the 2-minute offense and kind of the end of that first half. But if the Vikings do have to go down the field in 60 yards in 3 minutes or something, where they have to keep throwing down the field, I think the offensive line, that's where that concern is going to come up at some point this season. And if the situation's more severe, where it's a 2-minute drill, that was a concern all preseason, all training camp, and today. The ball moved a little bit, but then when the clock management, the last 30 seconds, I think, which isn't all on Cousins, I wouldn't say, but I think there's also some concern there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. We did see that a lot in training camp. I remember DeFilippo threw his headset, and a piece of it almost hit me at training camp because he was so upset with the performance of the offense. But we saw it in the game, too. The 2-minute offense looked terrible in the first half. I think a lot of it due to pressure on the offensive line, and to take a sack there when you're trying to throw a Hail Mary.
There was that play too where I think they were at like the 43 or 45 with like 20 seconds left, and the one time the offensive line protected Cousins enough to stand in the pocket and be patient was the time they needed to move and pick it up. and Cousins settled it for a check down to, I think he was Treadwell maybe for like a couple of yards, and by that time there was like 7 seconds left, and they didn't really have any options.
Yeah, and I think I'm a little concerned with the non-trust already in Daniel Carlson. I mean, if it was me, I probably would have given him the
55
shot.
yarders, and they didn't even bother to even look Carlson's way. They went for the punt, which, I mean, I would have. We saw him 57-yarder in Denver, which we get the altitude and the air pressure, whatever the science that goes into that. But I mean, it was pretty comfortable, good from 60 plus. You'd think inside and indoors they'd give him a chance on one of those.
Yeah, that's why you bring in a big leg. Use it,
Right, exactly. I mean, but I mean, defense. Now we've been talking a lot about concerns for the Vikings. I keep bringing up that word, which really we've just been talking a lot about the offensive line. That's kind of the one concern right now. But we do need to kind of reiterate that this defense is like elite still. I mean, I think the red zone defense is really awesome. I mean, their touchdown was a 22-yarder, but it seemed like about a 50-yarder because Garoppolo threw it from like the 40-yard line. And that throw, again, is really indefensible. It's one of those where they were just too good. That throw and that catch was just too good to defend. But this defense, Xavier Rhodes made a big play. Harrison Smith made multiple big plays. Sheldon Richardson was a beast today. He was everywhere. How about, again, adding Sheldon Richardson to this defensive line? It's unfair. It's unfair. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think one of the sacks today he had, it was literally all four of them landing on top of him. Like it was like a cartoon when a guy gets sacked and you just have all these huge guys falling. That's what it was. This defense is going to keep the Vikings in games all season long. And if not, there's going to be the main reason they win a lot of games. So we don't want to be talking about the concerns all the time. That's kind of just the way this went. But as far as concerns go, the defense is nowhere near that list. Every part of that defense is awesome. Mike Hughes, even the first-round pick, with Mackenzie Alexander out, got the pick six today. I mean, what else can you say about this defense? I mean, it's funny because it's 16-point games or 16 points they allowed today. And outside of that one kind of long drive that actually ended up with a fumble, that was kind of the most concerning part for me was that long drive, even though they didn't score on the drive. But, I mean, what else can you say about this defense, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic. There's not really a weak portion on there. I mean, if you were to lose somebody, that's a different story, but I still think they're very deep. Like you said, they're going to keep the Vikings in every single game, especially when they go against the top tier teams. I think it was Tony Gonzalez on the halftime show that said with the acquisition of Kirk Cousins to go with that fantastic defense, it just puts this team at another level. So I really, besides the offensive line, I don't see any major weaknesses. And when you get a dynamic quarterback to go along with an elite defense, that's a recipe for success. So I like the Vikings move going forward.
All right, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a really great win. Lots of fun, I think, in the game. I think even the Dalvin run where he broke like 4 tackles and then fumbled, that's one of those that's going to be, it's not really going to be on the highlight reel, but dare I say it reminded us a little bit of Adrian Peterson, right? The fantastic run that ends up turning into a fumble. I'm not trying to take us down that road, but but as we kind of wrap up here with, Vikings are 1-0. I think kind of to retouch on some of the points we made so far that, Kirk Cousins was he made the throws he needed to make, a little bit better under pressure than we thought. The running game kind of did not meet expectations based on training camp and preseason. Didn't seem like the holes were there for Dalvin. He kind of he really had more production on the ground than maybe he should have, given what was available to him for open running lanes. Defensively, I think everything was really great. I guess the one concern would be George Kittle getting open and having as big of a day as he'd had, and he really should have had more, given some of the throws Garoppolo missed. Other than that, I think we can go to. I'm going to kind of wrap up by, we'll give a skull scale here. We'll give a skull scale. For those who don't know, that's my weekly column on VikingsTerritory.com. It's a measuring tool from 1 to 10, rating your Vikings optimism. So before the season started, it was a 9 before this week, just because, a 10 would be Super Bowl homeboy, Vikings are going to win the Super Bowl, all that type of talk. Whereas one would be like, blow it up, tear down US Bank Stadium, restart the whole franchise. So, with Sean, where is your skull scale right now? Are you Super Bowl Vikings are for sure going to win it at 10? Are you a little bit less than that, or are you at 1 for some reason? What's your skull scale?
Well, it's funny. I was messaging you guys earlier this morning, and I said I've never been this confident in the Vikings heading into a season. And, there's always cautious optimism going into a season, but I don't see – and there's always injury concerns, but screw that for now. I'm going 9.5.
9.5, yeah. I think – I don't know if I have yet to. I'm going to look back at the game. I'm going to do my research, if you will, to see if the skull scale will jump from 9 to 9.5 this week. But it's going to for sure stay at 9. This team is, it proved itself today that it's a contender to stay, if you will. Like last year, they kind of showed the rest of the NFL that they're a contender, largely because of that defense. Now they got a shiny new toy at quarterback, and he seemed to prove that he was worth it, at least today. Obviously a small sample size, but at least a 9 on the skull scale. This team is, we're going to really find out by about week 5, week 6 when they play. They have at that time played both the Rams and the Eagles. That'll be fun to watch. But then our final point here, or final little segment, I guess, if you will, we'll choose a player of the game. Vikings again winning 24-16. Do you have one player of the game? Maybe how about this? We'll go both sides of the ball. We'll go offensive player of the game, defensive player of the game. Sean, what do you got?
Well, I'll take the obvious. Well, it's not really an obvious pick, but I got to go Mike Hughes on defense. Basically, a game altering, if you will. Yeah, it was a game altering pick six.
I would say it. Yeah, because the Niners were starting to kind of creep back into the game. I think they were only down by 7 at the time, and then Hughes came up with the big play.
Yep, and in usual Vikings fashion, we let him right back into it. But anyway, I thought Hughes is phenomenal. He's better than advertised. He made special teams plays, made plays on defense. So I'm really excited. I can see now why the Vikings got rid of. Well, they didn't get rid of, but they have Newman retire, and to have Holton Hill back there too is it's just phenomenal. So I really like Hughes. I think he's going to be a great player. As far as offense, I'm going to go Adam Thielen. Quietly good game. Just Mr. Solid. I think he had 6 catches, 102 yards. Quietly, didn't have a touchdown, but that's my boy right there, Adam Thielen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was kind of very under the radar that Thielen did get another 100-yard game today. I mean, you saw him kind of around. I think what was that one play where he was had to have been a blown coverage where he was wide open on the left sideline there for I think a 30-something yard game. I think that's the one that got him over 100. But I'll start with this is going to be a little bit under the radar pick for defensive player of the game. I'm going to go Sheldon Richardson. I thought he was everywhere today, and he didn't make the splash, the turnover, the interceptions, anything like that. But he was very disruptive both against the run and against the pass. I thought he was a man amongst boys. We'll say that, which is hard. It's kind of hard to elevate yourself to that status on this defense, but I think he did that today. Offensively, I think I'm just going to go Kirk Cousins, and it's weird saying that because he did kind of coast and falter a little bit down the stretch as the Vikings were trying to seal the win, but he was very hot right away. He made all the throws that he needed to make, picked up key third downs, and both touchdown tosses were absolute 10 cents. So Kirk Cousins will be my offensive player of the game. Sean, any final thoughts before we conclude here and then we get going and start preparing? Well, we're going to watch the Packers-Bears game tonight, right, and see what we got.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go Bears, right? As far as final thoughts, nothing really. It's kind of what we all expected. I hate to say it, but I was 1 point off from my score prediction. I guess 24-17.
I was actually also 1 point off because I said 23-16, yeah, and you said 24-17. So you're looking at the two smartest Vikings analysts that you can find, right? I mean, we're not going to get, unless someone actually predicted 24-16. Show me that person. But
Yeah,
I think right here we're the best combo, right?
Yeah. But no,
Yeah.
great win. Great to get a win right off the bat. Bring on the Packers, baby.
I love that. We'll end on that note. Once again, guys, this has been the About the Labor Vikings postgame show. We plan to do this every single week after a Vikings game. Next week, it'll be after the Green Bay Packers game. That should be fun. But we'll be live on Vikings Territory YouTube page, also live on the About the Labor Periscope page, which can be found on the Twitter account. And of course, also on Shindig, which we send the links out on Twitter as well. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube page if that's what that's how you're watching us right now. And we'll see you guys next week.